Hello and welcome to Homeopathy Simply Explained. I am Petra Merker, a naturopath for classical homeopathy in Darmstadt, and in today's seminar on ME/CFS we will talk about new ways of homeopathic treatment, the medication LDN, Tavor and Pregabalin, the course and homeopathic medicines used, especially the course with Helleborus. I will talk with you about the MoCa test and Tuberculinum for tantrums, the further improvement through an Arsenic cold, and finally we will take a closer look at the homeopathic medicine Arsenic album and Ammonium carbonicum. Today I would like to discuss with you our daughter's reaction and the associated homeopathic medicines, and how I treated other complaints symptomatically with homeopathy. Unfortunately, there is no curative treatment in conventional medicine, so only symptomatic medicines are given there, which usually have side effects. The ME/CFS disease is very diverse, and so we also have to find ways in homeopathic treatment to provide patients with relief from their symptoms and at the same time gradually bring them a step towards recovery. In today's video I will show you how this can be done homeopathically. In order to be able to treat my daughter and other ME/CFS patients homeopathically, I had to say goodbye to my conventional homeopathic treatment of single remedy therapy. Of course, I still treat other patients with other illnesses using classical homeopathy, but with ME/CFS I reached the limits of the classical method and was forced to take new approaches, which I will discuss with you little by little. The problem with ME/CFS patients is that the illness produces many different symptoms that cannot be treated with just one homeopathic remedy, especially in the acute phase. The symptoms are so serious that we cannot wait forever for a single homeopathic remedy to bring success. ME/CFS patients need rapid relief of symptoms, especially in the acute phase. And we can do this homeopathically by using several remedies at the same time. Later, when the acute phase has calmed down, we can slowly return to single remedy therapy and follow Hahnemann's principles again. Our daughter's body was in such turmoil that every little touch and every little noise put her into a state of emergency. Her autonomic nervous system was so overactive that it was torture for us parents to watch. We could no longer receive visitors, had to talk very quietly, couldn't play any music, and had to constantly urge our son to be quiet too. It was a restriction for the whole family. A vacation was out of the question, and everyone in the family was in a state of panic because things were steadily deteriorating until we started using the homeopathic remedy Helleborus niger. First of all, I had worked out my theory of subacute distributive shock that can underline this illness and gave my daughter aconite and opium, one global each every day to influence the autonomic nervous system, which helped her a lot. I gave aconite for situations in which the sympathetic nervous system took over, such as anxiety and other states of excitement, and opium in situations in which the parasympathetic nervous system took over in states of extreme weakness and tiredness. These two medicines elevated her symptoms, and so we did not need any other sedatives or stimulants. Whether both medicines can have a positive effect on ME/CFS patients, or perhaps only one or neither of them, depends on the individual symptoms of the respective patient. I have already discussed both medicines in a video. Interestingly, in conventional medicine, ME/CFS patients are given low dose of naltrexone, which blocks the opioid receptors and thereby increases endorphin production. This influences the immune system and reduces inflammation. Pain is also reduced. In 1984, LDN was used for the first time in the USA to treat drug addicts. It was only later discovered that it can also be used in other ways in low doses, because in some diseases such as cancer, multiple sclerosis and so on, the endorphin level is reduced, which can cause symptoms. However, LDN should not be used in children under 18, as the effect of endorphins in growing organs and their function is not yet known. The effect of LDN can be an energy surge, and I have had patients in whom LDN resulted in a worsening of symptoms because the patients had overexerted themselves during this phase. Other side effects can also occur, and then it can be difficult homeopathically to distinguish the side effects of the administered medicine from the symptoms produced by the organism itself. But we often have to deal with this difficulty in homeopathic treatment. Another conventional medicine that is often used for ME/CFS patients is Tavor. This relieves anxiety, has a calming effect, and promotes sleep by reducing the excitability of nerve cells, and like other benzodiazepines, acts on the GABA receptors. Pregabalin is also a conventional medication that acts on the GABA receptors and reduces anxiety or neuropathic pain. It is an anticonvulsant. With aconite and opium, I had 2 homeopathic medicines on hand that buffered these symptoms, and we were able to do without conventional medicines. Since homeopathic treatment is a very individual treatment and we have various medicines to choose from, other homeopathic medicines can of course also be used for other patients. At this time, our daughter was also given the homeopathic medicine Hyoscyamus daily, which has an effect on the G protein coupled receptors, and Kalium phosphoricum as a Schüssler salt. I will discuss these 2 homeopathic medicines in more detail in another video. With these medicines, I was able to control certain symptoms so that our daughter experienced significant relief from her symptoms. Before I had the theory on shock and ME/CFS, our daughter had to go through exclusion diagnostic, which required an enormous amount of energy from her and caused her to completely collapse. First of all, I will give you a brief overview of the initial condition we are talking about. Our daughter was completely bedridden and had a very weak voice. She was only able to sit for very short periods of time with support once a day, as she could not do this on her own due to her weakness. She was also unable to eat or drink on her own. Our daughter also struggled with anxiety, which is not surprising given the severity of the illness. At the beginning of August, I gave her the homeopathic medicine Helleborus niger for the first time because of her history of head injuries. My guess is that this meant that the blood-brain barrier was no longer functioning properly, making it easier for the coronavirus to penetrate the brain and cause damage. One day after taking Helleborus, some energy returned to our daughter. On August 4th, 2023, she suddenly had a little more strength in her arms and left the bed for the first time in about 4 months while lying on the skateboard. It took until August 19th, 2023, until she was able to sit for 1 or 2 minutes with help. From August 24, 2023, our daughter was able to crawl around the apartment with the help of a TheraBand support on her stomach. The core muscles were not yet strong enough and had to be rebuilt first. 2 days later, however, she was able to crawl without the TheraBand support. It took until September 11th, 2023 for our daughter to be able to walk again and eat with us while sitting at the table. At that time, however, she was not yet able to see because her brain did not have enough energy to process what she had seen, so she still needed supervision while eating. Her speech did not work as it did before either, but at least our daughter was now awake from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. without constantly sleeping in between. Her fears also decreased, but still occurred from time to time. We have been able to go out into nature with our daughter again for some time, which was incredibly good for her psyche. At the beginning of her recovery, my husband had specially converted a handcart into a mobile sleeper so that our daughter could sleep outside whenever necessary. But we were also able to visit our allotment garden again, where our daughter loved to spend time. Any activity was still very strenuous and she still needed support in many areas, such as brushing her teeth. From November 3rd, 2023, she was unable to fall asleep for the first time and her vision was also returned to 80%. In between, there were always small relapses, the so-called PEM, which meant that the potency of Helleborus had to be adjusted again and again, according to the Kent scale, up to C5000. PEM meant that she had to sleep more during the day again. I explained exactly what PEM is in a previous video. On November 7th, 2023, our daughter was able to drink from a cup on her own again, and on November 18th, 2023, she was able to draw people and faces again and also write something. With the MoCa test, we can easily demonstrate the process made during homeopathic treatment in terms of cognitive situation. The MoCa test, also known as the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test, can detect slight impairments in brain performance and can also be used in ME/CFS patients with cognitive disorders. The test measures spatial perception and memory performance, arithmetic, spatial and temporal orientation, word finding, coherent thinking, and verbal fluency. If the result is below 26 points, we are dealing with a cognitive impairment. Since ME/CFS patients often do not have the energy to do the test in one go, you have to plan to do it over several days. On November 7th, 8th, 2023, I did the MoCa test that you can see here with our daughter over 2 days to see how her cognitive functions were doing. She achieved 15 points out of 30, which was impressive for such a short period of regeneration. I'll link you the MoCa test in both English and German versions under the video. Her vision was now back to 100%. On November 15th, I tried to do a few homework for school with her because she really wanted to, but it was still too exhausting. She managed 3 minutes and then immediately fell asleep. She also withdrew during visits because the social interaction with all the noises was too much for her. On December 6th, our daughter was able to do small fine motor tasks again, like peeling and scooping out an egg. A short visit to her grandmother was also possible again, and she didn't have a headache for the first time. From December 27th, 2023, our daughter was able to slowly inline skate for the first time and didn't crash as a result. She was also able to bath in the bath tube alone again. She wasn't yet able to coordinate things that she couldn't see with her eyes. Her short-term memory wasn't working well either. She forgot to put things away, like putting dog food in the fridge, or if the trash can wasn't where it was supposed to be, she would just throw the trash in the place where the trash can had originally been. At that time, our daughter could not control her emotions well, was easily irritable over little things, and did not like to talk about things she could not yet do because she was annoyed that she couldn't do them yet. When she had tantrums, I always gave her a single dose of Tuberculinum XM, which we have already discussed and which increasingly stabilized her. The sensory overload decreased from September 2023, when she still rated them on scale 10, to January 2024 on scale 3. So that she could even go ice skating with us for an hour very early in the morning, when there was not much going on. When the hall filled up, however, the sensory overload became too stressful, so we had to go home. A visit to the swimming pool early in the morning and a 3-hour hike with breaks in nature were also possible at the end of January 2024. If PAM occurred, it no longer lasted 2 whole weeks, but only 4 days. A cold required the use of Arsenicum album XM. Further improvement through an Arsenicum album cold on February 13th, 2024. Our daughter was given aconite XM and opium XM once a day, as already discussed. Hyoscyamus C30 and Kalium phosphoricum D6, Tuberculinum XM for tantrums as needed, and Arsenicum album XM 3 times a day due to the cold, and Helleborus niger M. As is often the case in homeopathic treatment, an improvement in symptoms can be seen after a cold has been successfully treated, and this was also the case here. Because 2 days later, our daughter was cognitively fitter and started reading a book. Up to that point, only easy tasks that were already automated were possible, for example, tasks from the multiplication tables. On March 16, I increased Helleborus to XM, which improved mental fitness from scale 8 to scale 5. Just 3 days later, she was able to brush her teeth and wash her hair on her own for the first time. Her arm coordination improved when she did something with them that she couldn't see. It was no longer so difficult for her to talk about her problems, and she felt generally more stable. At this point, we will interrupt the discussion of the course of the disease, and I will tell you a little about the homeopathic medicine used, Arsenicum album, and talk about another smaller medicine that can also be used for ME/CFS patients, Ammonium carbonicum. We will discuss the homeopathic medicine Hyoscyamus and Kalium phosphoricum in more detail in the following videos. We have already looked at Arsenicum album in relation to bleeding and will now look at it again in relation to exhaustion. In the drug picture of Arsenic album, we find memory loss. Patients think that they cannot be cured and therefore struggle with anxiety. There is a dullness and weakness in the head so that thinking is possible and patients become very irritable. There may also be a loss of hearing or vision. Confusionness fades so that absent-mindedness increases. Delirium accompanied by great exhaustion can also occur. We will deal with the topic of delirium again in a later section, because this is also occur in ME/CFS patients due to the weakness. With Arsenic album, a complete loss of speech can occur when fully conscious, but also extreme talk activeness when awake and asleep. The patients are very sensitive to external sensory impressions such as light or slight noises and suffer from insomnia. Despite the exhaustion, there is great restlessness. The headaches are neuralgic in nature and associated with restlessness. There is dizziness, which causes the eyes to go black. The patient is affected by a strong sensitivity to noise and cannot tolerate people's voice. The extreme exhaustion can subside and then reappear after a while. The tiredness and weakness are accompanied by flabby muscle and cold extremities. A herpes infection may be present. The throat and esophagus can go into a paralysis-like state. The bladder becomes atonic and the patient has no strength to urinate or completely loses control of emptying the bladder. The voice is weak to the point of loss of voice and the tongue can feel heavy. Arsenic album can be used when the flu suddenly starts with extreme exhaustion. Breathing also becomes weaker and the situation worsens when talking, so that the patient suffers from respiratory distress, which can lead to lung paralysis. Advanced patients are too weak to sit up or even move. There is pain in the neck and fainting spells can also occur with a feeling as if warm air is flowing from the spine into the head. There is also weakness in the back, arms, thighs and feet. It is a weakness that is felt deep inside in the bone marrow. The extensor muscles contract due to the weakness, so that stiffness can occur or the muscles become flabby. If patients have diarrhea or another illness, this weakens them even more. Despite the tiredness, the patient cannot sleep, and during the day the patient becomes somnolent when sitting. Somnolence is a sleepy state in the form of a disturbance of consciousness. Somnolence can occur with organic brain disorders, among other things. When sleep occurs with arsenic, it is a half sleep that is not restful. There is a feeling that a hot liquid is running through the blood vessels or that warm air is flowing up the spine. There is a chilliness during the day and sweating at night. If bleeding occurs, it seeps from the dry lips and anus. Petechiae on the skin or thrombosis of the large veins can also occur. Let's take a quick look at what arsenic poisoning does in order to be able to draw further conclusions about the homeopathic medicine. In arsenic poisoning, important enzymes that are needed for our metabolism are inhibited. Enzymes that contain sulfur groups in particular, but also molecules with phosphorus components such as ATP, which supplies our cells with energy, are affected. Neurological damage occurs with cramps, vomiting, diarrhea, sweating, but also disorders of blood formation or kidney and cardiovascular failure. Chronic arsenic poisoning manifests itself in headaches, dizziness, and sleep disorders. When we think of arsenic album in treatment, we should always consider ammonium carbonicum in the differential diagnosis. With ammonium carbonicum, patients are also sensitive to cold and are afraid for their health. There is absent-mindedness with a dull feeling in the head, which is why patients make mistakes when writing. They appear listless, depressed, and have a tendency to cry. Here, too, the symptoms are made worse by other people speaking or when they hear themselves speaking, and also by loud noises. Pain in the face occurs when thinking. There is dizziness all day long, which gets worse in the evening. There is a rush of blood to the head, and patients feel as if their brain is falling back and forth in the head. To the side they bend over. Sometimes there is a stabbing pain or the feeling as if everything is being squeezed out of the forehead. The scalp and hair are sensitive to touch, and light causes a burning sensation in the eyes. Overexertion of the eyes causes them to become weak, and the patient begins to see yellow spots. Some patients have such great pressure on their eyes that they are unable to open their eyelids, even though they are internally awake. Mental exertion causes heat in the face, accompanied by red cheeks. A herpes virus persists and patients can suffer from severe toothaches. Speaking is difficult due to weakness of the speech organ. This can lead to paralysis of the laryngeal nerves. Small amounts of filling and clothing can feel pressure. Patients may urinate involuntarily while sleeping. They are short of breath, have difficulty breathing due to chronic weakness of the chest, and suffer from palpitations after every exertion. The pulse is accelerated with a feeling as if the heart and veins are bursting and the lymph nodes are swollen. Here to there is neck pain and a heaviness, stiffness and weakness of the extremities with restlessness of the legs. Previously sprained joints can cause pain again, but pain can also be present throughout the body. The patient has a poor reaction due to exhaustion. Hysteria is present, which can produce symptoms that mimic organic diseases. When falling asleep, patients suddenly experience shortness of breath and wake up again. As is common with some ME/CFS patients, the blood is overloaded with carbon dioxide, which causes somnolence. Sleep is not restful and restless. During the day, the patient can then suffer from sudden attacks of sleep. Existing sputum tastes salty. As with sulfur, there is an aversion to washing. Patients are very cold and have cold feet. Consciousness can be clouded in an acute stage, and there can be cyanosis. If bleeding occurs, it is dark and comes from the intestines, nose and gums. As with opium, we are dealing with impending cerebral paralysis. This medicine can also be based on a tuberculinic miasm. Ammonium carbonicum, hartshorn salt, contains the poisonous ammonia. Let's take a quick look at what ammonia poisoning does exactly in order to be able to draw further conclusions about the homeopathic medicine. When inhaled, we have symptoms such as laryngeal edema, pneumonitis, and glottic spasm, even respiratory arrest. If ammonia gets into the blood, it can lead to speech and vision disorders, but also confusion, tremors of the hands, coma, and death. Ammonia damages the nerve cells in the brain, especially the astrocytes and muscle cells. Ammonia poisoning can also occur due to liver failure or enzyme defects, as ammonia is also produced in our metabolism and is converted to urea and excreted. As ammonium is very similar to the trace element potassium, poisoning is likely to result in a disruption of the glutamate receptor and thus an increased influx of calcium into the nerve and muscle cells, which leads to their death. The citric acid cycle in the mitochondria and the pH value of the cells are disrupted. In addition, the glutamine level in the brain increases and there is an increased formation of oxygen radicals, which can also contribute to the toxic effect in this area. If patients are sensitive to chemicals and react with health problems when farmers fertilize their fields, we should think of the medicine Ammonium carbonicum and Ammonium muriaticum. I hope you got some added value from this part of the seminar. I would be pleased if you give me a thumbs up, leave a comment under the video and join me again next time. Bye!